It's already filming. Okay, already filming.
Sorry, but like,
Let's do it!
Okay. Ready, Chelsea? Alright. Now it happened on the third day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace. You're not in frame.
outside. This is the inner court.
While the king sat on his royal throne, facing the entrance of the house. So it was when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court that she found favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. And then Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter, and the king said to her, "What do you wish, Queen Esther? What is your request?" "It shall be given to you, up to half of the kingdom." So Esther answered, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet I have prepared for him." And then the king said, "Bring Haman quickly, that he may do as Esther has said." So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared.
Banquet time. What? Sorry, man.
You can take the couch if you would like, Esther.
Please. It's your banquet. Eat it with.
And at the banquet of wine, the king said to Esther, "What is your petition? It shall be granted to you. What is your request? Up to the half of the kingdom. It shall be done." Then Esther answered and said, "My petition and request is this. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, then let the king and Haman come to the banquet which I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king has said." Okay, so Haman went out that day. Haman went out that day joyful and with a glad heart. But you need to switch with Maya. You need to sit where Maya's sitting. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he did not want to stand or that he did not want to stand or tremble before him, he was filled with indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home, and he sent and called for his friends and his wife Zeresh. Then Haman told them of his riches and the multitude of his children, everything in which the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced above the officials and servants of the king. Moreover, Haman said, "Besides, Queen Esther invited no one but me to come in with the king to a banquet that she prepared, and tomorrow I am again invited by her along with the king. Yet all this avails me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate." Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him,
You don't have any!
"You can be the friends if you would like." Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "Let a gallows be made 50 cubits high, and in the morning suggest to the king that Mordecai be hanged on it, and then go merrily with the king to the banquet." The thing pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. Okay. Sadie, you want to lay down on the couch?
Wow. Lay down, do
And-
king position.
And,
No,
Maya,
king position.
on the seat. That night the king could not sleep. So one was commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's doorkeepers. Who had sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. Then the king... You know how to be like plotting? You're plotting against the king.
This is a flashback.
Yeah, flashback.
You're in the flashback.
Oh.
Guys,
Okay.
you're in flashbacks. Evil plot.
And then the king said, "What honor or dignity has been bestowed on Mordecai for this?" And the king's servant who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." So the king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to suggest that he should hang Mordecai on the gallows.
Burst into your bedroom.
That he had prepared for him. And the king... Wait, you're not in there yet. And the And the king's servant said to him, "Haman is there, standing in the court. And then the king said, 'Let him come in.' So Haman came in and sat by Maya. So Haman came in, and the king asked him, 'What shall be done for the man who the king delights to honor?' Now Haman thought in his heart, 'Whom would the king delight to honor more than me?' And Haman answered the king, 'For the man who the king delights to honor, let a royal robe be brought which the king has worn, and a horse on which the king has ridden, which a royal crest placed on his head, and then let this robe and horse be delivered into the hand of the king's most noble princes, that he may array the man who the king delights to honor, then parade him on horseback through the city, and proclaim before him, Thus shall it be done to the man who the king delights to honor.' Then the king said to Haman, 'Hurry, take the robe and the horse as you suggested, and do so for Mordecai, the Jew, who sits within the king's gate. Leave nothing undone, all that you have spoken.' So Haman took the robe and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai.
Mordecai. Just go.
You guys can...
Yeah, I'll take care of it. Mr. Evan will take care of it.
Yeah.
I'm just servant.
Mordecai,
I'll take care of
you
it.
gotta be in that. Then the king... No, wait. So Haman took the robe and the horse and arrayed Mordecai and led him on horseback through the city square. And then proclaimed before him "Thus shall it be done to the man who the king delights to honor." Afterward, Mordecai went back to the king's gate. He's sitting in the chair. But Haman hurried to his house, mourning, with his head covered.
Not happy.
Over here, Rosa, with your wife. When Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him, his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, "If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him, but will surely fall before him." While they were still talking with him, one of the king's servants came and hastened to bring Haman to the banquet which Esther had prepared.
Somebody be a servant. Ah!
Okay.
No, we both. Well done. Oh. Wait, is this my
Yep.
banquet?
Oh, please.
I need to be at my banquet. I don't know his word on that was.
So the king and Haman went to dine with Queen Esther. And on the second day at the banquet of wine, the king said again to Esther, "What is your petition?"
Mr. Play.
"What is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Up to half of the kingdom, it shall be done." Then Queen Esther answered and said, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, if it pleases the king, let my life be given me at my petition and my people at my request. For we have been sold, my people and I, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. And we have been sold as male and female slaves. I would have held my tongue, although the enemy would never compensate for the king's loss." So King Ahasuerus answered Queen Esther,
Sorry, my bad.
"Who is he? Where is he? Who would dare presume in his heart to do such a thing?" And Esther said, "The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman." So Haman was terrified before the king and queen. Then the king arose in his wrath from the banquet of wine.
You're dead!
And went into the palace garden. You can go to the palace garden.
Oh, yeah. Mordecai's still. I mean, no, you can.
You can go wherever. And so.
He's still alive.
But Haman stood before Queen Esther, pleading for his life, and for he saw that evil was determined against him, and by the king. When the king returned from the palace garden and to the place of the banquet of wine, Haman had fallen across the couch where Esther was.
Awkward.
Then the king said, "Will he also assault the queen while I am in the house?" And as the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. I don't know. Servant. Now, just like pull her hood up or something. I don't know. And now Harbona, one of the servants, said to the king, "Look, the gallows, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on the king's behalf, is standing in the house of Haman." So the king said, "Hang him on it." So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai.
You can hang him with his. Yeah.
And then the king's wrath subsided. The end.